in this crazy time right now, I think joy is very, very hard for people to find because it's chaotic. And the one thing I'm not going to let chaos do is take my joy away, because that is my fuel to something I'm calling hard hope. Don't let your joy being taken away because you're angry at someone. Give this person grace. Joy is an elixir for change. That's what I find.
Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Menaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Lisa, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. I love your red background. It gives me joy already, just seeing the vibrancy in your background. Thank you.
So happy to hear. Thank you. Lisa, you work closely with leaders across politics, philanthropy, and business. What role do you believe joy plays in political leadership and governance?
Well, I think it's absolutely a critical thought process, emotion, goal, and principle. I think we are now beginning to see that people are finally admitting that it's necessary to do hard things. Before it was you either have joy or you do hard things. And now I think we're seeing more and more, if you don't have joy, it is hard to do hard things. And with the kind of complexity of a poly crisis and what's going on with our brains on technology, I think people are looking for joy. I think how we get it and what is real joy and what is not is to be discussed.
Yes, let's actually talk about that. I'm curious, what is real joy for you?
Yeah, for me, it's very interesting because I'm the mother. I'm a very proud mom of two boys, a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. And whether they like it or not, they just accidentally become a learning lab for all of the things that I think about with leadership and just how to be a good person. We spend a lot of time talking about the difference between kind of hedonistic joy and satisfaction joy. So there's this kind of short-term dopamine hit. You buy something, you get sort of praise, and all of that is fine and it's good, but it's quite fleeting. But the joy I am talking about is in the moment, but it's about the long-lasting hard work of the satisfaction joy, like satisfactory joy. And that's what I kind of drive my kids towards, what I drive myself towards. I mean, I'm trying to make politics better. So you can imagine that is something that is not a quick win situation. Even when someone wins an election that you respect, that's a win, but then you go on to the governing. So I think about joy over time and joy with satisfaction and accomplishment.
I want to dive more into what you just mentioned, that you try to make politics better, and you co-founded Apolitical, which has actually been recognized as one of Fast Company's most innovative companies in the world, and it currently is being used by public servants in over 160 countries, which is quite remarkable. So, what inspired you to create Apolitical, and what would you say is the largest impact it has had on public servants and politics globally?
Well, thank you for that. I would say I'm a person who doesn't let myself often feel the success of things and sort of stop and go, wow, this is great. I think in part because I'm an impatient entrepreneur wanting to solve problems. And so like once you find like a little problem solved, you're kind of looking at the next problem and the next opportunity. So I really am trying to be better for myself, to stop and pause and go, wow, what we've built is really cool. And then what's next? So I've been involved in politics and policy all my life because I love people. And I do politics to do policy so that you can help make people on the planet a better place, right? Make a better place for all of us to live. And I started noticing maybe about 15 years ago that no matter if you were on the left or on the right, and I think those classifications aren't that helpful, but just roughly, if you can follow me on that, that hardly anyone had a good thing to say about government or politics. And I started getting very worried that in the absence of trust, I think it's hard to feel joy with taxes, although some people actually do if they feel like it serves them and the broader society. But I felt like this kind of pushback against politics and government created a very dangerous situation where if we quit believing, sometimes for good reasons and sometimes not, in the institutions that are serving us and we need to help feed them, that it's very dangerous, that it's ripe for really destruction. And so, and on top of that, we basically have 18th century politics and 19th century institutions, or even 20th century institutions. And the world has changed a lot, right? People have different expectations. You can click an app and you can get food delivered. Yet when you click something on your phone, in most countries, you don't get instant responses from your government about anything from water not being turned on to paying your taxes or healthcare delivery. So we stopped and we said, oh boy, how can we help government update itself so it can best serve people on the planet? It's very interesting because what we thought people in government needed was the best ideas in politics and government, like new innovation, how to do AI, how to do, climate. All of those things are very true. But what we realized, looking back, we should have known this from the beginning, but that's why you learn and ask questions, is that what we heard people needing in government was a sense of belonging, an ability to have a safe place, maybe to ask hard questions, or even quote unquote, there's no stupid questions, but stupid questions, and a place for exchange. I've tried this in one place, you've tried this in another place, this worked, this didn't work. So we really build people first communities. That's really what we do at Apolitical. And like you said, we are the largest network in the world, people working on government. We do not take a position at Apolitical if big government is good or small government is good or how to do government. But we believe that if you don't have, I would even say, a joyful workforce, people who come to work feeling this sense of accomplishment and possibility every day, then our societies can't thrive if they don't. So we really focus on those skills, those mindsets, and appreciation and the sense of community in the work.
Beautiful. And can you elaborate a little bit more? What are those skills that you have found to be most necessary and that you've integrated as part of the apolitical platform?
So I appreciate you asking the questions about skills and mindsets. I would say that ahead of skills come mindsets. So one of the most important things that we have learned that it's important to have is a sense of curiosity, a sense of agility, or that just means wanting to try new things, a sense of self reflection, like reflecting on yourself, reflecting on your learning. And if you have, there's many more, but those are the really important ones. This like curiosity, reflection, and agility. The world is moving so quickly that no one is expected anymore to have all the answers. But what you need to be able to do is to adapt, be curious, and be reflective. And if you have those, then kind of whatever's coming towards you, you will have a lot of the capabilities to then learn new skills. So, for example, even when we started the company 10 years ago, no one was talking about AI. So, in order to learn AI, that's a skill. How to do prompt engineering is a skill. We're the largest community in the world of people in government, ethically understanding how to use AI for good in government. But if you don't have the curiosity and the agility to change the way you work and reflecting, ooh, how do I do this? Then you're not going to be able to learn that new skill. So this is a really important thing that I kind of under indexed earlier in my life, particularly working with politicians, because I thought if you just trained people well, then kind of anything was possible. But now I realize that you have to screen for certain characteristics. So for example, another one is intrinsic motivation, like why are they doing it? And I'm getting better at mostly understanding sort of why people are doing it. I don't think any of these things are, you're either good at them or you're bad at them. You probably have dials where you can dial up and down depending on the situation. So we do a lot of work on, creating the environment where people feel like they can be curious, creating the environment where people feel like they can try new things, creating moments of these pauses and reflections to really help build on those skills that we need today.
Beautiful. And as part of your work, I know that you've been in touch with some of the world's most influential people, from Nobel Peace Prize winners and world leaders. What's one thing that you've learned about joy and life through these interactions?
Well, I really feel fortunate to have worked with everyone from Wangari Maathai, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for her work on the environment and women's rights, to Leila Gobi, who was another African woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize, and many other extraordinary people. And what I find really helpful to break down, there's a gentleman named John Neffinger who wrote a book about this, about what is charisma. And kind of when you hear charisma, sometimes in your mind, you can think, oh, that's kind of, they're tricking you or it's propaganda. But I've learned my favorite leaders combine strength and warmth. So if you think of a grid of strength and warmth, so if you have a lot of strength but no warmth, that's a hard person to be around because it's quite dictatorial, right? But if you have a lot of warmth and not a lot of strength, it's kind of rudderless. You don't know where to go. So this diagram of strength and warmth is powerful. That's what charisma is. If you think of Nelson Mandela, he had sort of a strength and warmth. Even if you think of Jane Goodall, right? She has a quiet strength. It's less obvious than another person, but she has an extraordinary warmth, and that warmth comes with expertise. And I have found with nearly all of those people I've been, being around them is joy. Why? Because you are the beneficiaries of that strength and warmth, that guidance, that sense of curiosity, that leadership capability. But because you're in a warm place, you feel joy around them. Joy doesn't have to be you're always dancing on top of the table. I mean, I love to do that too, but you can have different shades of joy, right? You can have calm joy, you can have exuberant joy, but it's a sense of like deep satisfaction in the process of what you're trying to do your work. And I really see those leaders do that. I tend to really be drawn to people who are funny and don't take themselves too seriously. And I find the best leaders, because they have this reflective moment, because they're intrinsically motivated, they can laugh at themselves, right? They can say, oh, that was silly. Why did I do this? Because they have this agility, right? They have this growth mindset versus this fixed mindset, which is necessary in order to be a leader. So for me, joy is a critical experience. It has been a huge part of my life from the time I was a kid. And the older I get, I'm exploring it more. That's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because there aren't a lot of people who do this. Now, I run now our foundation. So our company has given stock to the foundation. The foundation works on the political leadership we need in the 21st century. And we have as a major operating principle, like one of our top five, joy. And it's funny because everyone says, oh, you can't have joy when you're around politicians. They're too serious. They won't want to have, that's just absolutely bullocks. Like, they're people. Leaders are people too, and they want to have joy. So we bring joy into meetings, everything from confetti to dancing, right? They're humans that have a desire to be human. And so joy is an elixir for change. That's what I find.
I love it. And talking about leaders, whether they may be in a political realm or in a corporate realm, often many leaders burn out chasing impact. How do you
Mm.
believe people can balance purpose driven work with personal joy?
Oh boy, this is a $1 million question, right? Or $1 billion question, because I feel lots of people on this path. You didn't ask me to reformulate it in a bit of advice, but I'm going to give it in that way if that's helpful, because I've been thinking about it a lot. I mean, I'm 51. I have been pursuing some sort of impact before that word impact was around, right? Impact and purpose were not words that I used as a kid. For me, it was doing the right thing. I grew up a competitive athlete and I loved winning. And I grew up going to church with my grandmother. So it made me feel a sense of duty and connection to something bigger than myself, and a duty to my community. So if you love winning and you love helping people, you go into politics. So I never thought to myself, I'm going to be an impact purpose person. I just did what I thought was the right thing to do. But in reflection on that and watching lots of people burn out, I think there are a couple pieces of advice. I think number one, don't take yourself so seriously. I mean, I find a lot of people, and this game Fortnite, that's a very big multiplayer game that my kids used to play a lot. There's these things called sweaty tryhards. So there are people in the game that just try hard all the time, all the time, all the time. And sometimes in trying so hard, you can't be successful. So I find that people who try hard all the time, they're so tight that I don't mean just tight physically. They're so tight in their minds that they kind of miss the opportunities around them because they're so single tracked mind, and they kind of put the weight of the world on their shoulders. And I find that a bit egoistic. It's like there are many of us, we do our best, we're interconnected. So kind of don't maybe always try so hard, maybe try smarter, take breaks, don't think you have all the answers, but also don't doubt that you don't know things. And that's kind of the balance of like, don't doubt yourself, but don't overthink that you have everything. Kind of hold yourself in this balance all the time of how to do it. I also think what's going on with people is you cannot live an intensely purposeful or even joyful life if you don't take care of yourself in other ways. So if you don't eat right, if you don't sleep right, if you spend too much time getting dopamine hits. I mean, the thing I see with people who are able to quote unquote be successful, and with that I mean make a goal, work towards it, and have the satisfaction of achieving that goal, is if they don't have good personal habits. Right? Really, like it comes down to, you don't win a marathon if you just get up one day and you run it. Like you have to eat well, you have to train for it. You have to think of your life as a series of habits. And it's something that I look for in political leaders too, because if they don't treat their body well, you can be quite good and get lucky. But oftentimes the people who don't take care of that mind body connection have a really hard time being successful leaders. And then they put it all in and then the flame goes out.
I love that, and it's just so essential because indeed, if we don't have the energy within us, right? How can we actually have a positive impact on this world? So really love everything that you have shared. So I want to dive deeper into joy, and if there would actually be a recipe for living more joyfully, what do you believe are the three essential ingredients, and why are they essential?
I'm going to bridge back to your question, then I'll get to this one because I think it's really important. It's a bit of a cautionary tale I'm worried about right now. It's very trendy for people to go in and do the inner work, to do their yoga, to do their meditation. There is a bit of a nervousness I have, which is connected to answering this question, that if they go too far in, then they kind of lose themselves in themselves. When I think a lot about the science of, right, where does awe come from, which is connected to joy, right, is, and can come from a solitary moment of bliss, but it often comes from, we know this from the research, like being in unison with a group of people, seeing an ordinary person do an extraordinary thing, spending time in nature where you feel so small that the world feels big and beautiful. So I just want to, I worry about this like deep inner work if you don't go back out into the world. So maybe I'll tell you a little bit about my relationship with joy because it's quite specific, and then I'll lead you to your three things. So when I was a little girl, I wanted a pet. I think a lot of people grow up wanting pets. I begged my parents, I begged my parents. And then one Christmas Eve, we pull up to a strip mall in Marysville, Washington, next to a Mexican restaurant, and there's a pet store. And my parents walk me in, and we go to the back, and there's a pile of kittens. And they say, for Christmas, you're going to get a cat. You and your brother are going to get a cat. But it was clear that it was going to be my cat because I was the older one and I wanted a cat. And I was looking at all the kittens, and there was the kittens who jumped at me, and there was the kittens that were roly, and the kittens with the beautiful eyes, and all these kittens, right? It's like a social media meme. And then there was a cat at the bottom of the pile that had a crooked tail. Now, I grew up going to church every Sunday, and around that time, you sing Joy to the World. It's a song that you sing in almost every choir. And so joy was on my mind. Like Christmas for Christians, I'm not religious now, but having these rituals was a time to reflect on joy to the world, right? This is such an amazing time. Jesus is here. And so I had joy on my mind. So I see this cat at the bottom of the pile, and this cat has a crooked tail. And I think to myself, joy to the world, this cat has come, right? It doesn't matter if it's a crooked tail. It doesn't matter if it's at the bottom. If I think that cat is joy, then it's joy. If that cat thinks it's joy, then it's joy. And I guess that's my like number one advice in life that my mom gave me is like thinking makes it so. Joy isn't something you find behind a corner. Joy is an outlook on life, right? It's really a choice. Now, I'm not saying that that's an easy choice to make, but every year I try to read Man's Search for Meaning. And if you read that book, it reminds you that people even found peace within themselves in the worst situations in concentration camps. I'm not romanticizing that at all, but I mean that the human mind is quite powerful. So I practice regular joyful looking. I look for joy. I look for people smiling at each other. I look for people helping one another. I smile at people. I look for joy. And in the looking for the joy, it's exactly what I find. If I want to find sorrow and anger, I find it. And sometimes I do. Sometimes in a bad mood, I'm kind of looking to reaffirm that. So for me, I don't necessarily have three pieces of advice. I just have one really big piece of advice. Thinking makes it so. And as much as you can, get up looking for it, cultivating it, journaling about it, sharing it, and even wearing it. Now, I don't have it on today, unfortunately, but the my kids know that I can be quite a my nickname playing sports was Animal, and I love like extreme weather. I kind of love extreme nature and extreme weather. And so they named me Thunder Joy, joy after my first cat, and thunder because I like this thunder of joy. Now, joy can be subtle. Remember, we talked about like the subtle moments of joy. But for me, I actually wear it. I have a necklace that I wear that says Thunder Joy. And it kind of reminds me of one, my kids called me that, but two, it's just a reminder that you can actually hang joy around your neck, right? And then people ask you it and you tell the story. So I think it can come easily or it can come with a lot of work, but it can always come.
I love everything you have shared. Thank you. And since you've mentioned that you love extreme weather, I know that you've done some Arctic expeditions, among many other things that you have done. And you truly seem to love adventure and living fully. What advice would you have for our listeners who may want to bring more play and novelty and adventure in their lives?
Well, thank you for that. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and so I was kind of blessed with big nature behind me. And when I was a little girl, a volcano, I'd say people blew up in my backyard. It really wasn't my backyard, but it felt like my backyard. So I had this like nature reminding me that we are really small, and I find joy with that. Like I definitely respect Mother Nature, and I grew up around a lot of Native American spaces and places, and so this interconnectedness, this interwovenness, I have definitely felt, and so I tend to find and make adventure wherever I go. And my advice to you is that adventure is all around you. You do not need to go all the way to Greenland and see the icebergs, which is a fascinating and a very important experience for many people because you know when you see this crazy thing, the beauty of these glaciers and these icebergs, and some of the tragedy behind a lot of the tragedy behind the receding of them, about the amount of ice that is falling. And you sit in these places and you have beauty and destruction at the same time. And I find that a lot to take in. And you know, people cry, people go very deep in themselves. And what I also find interesting in the midst of all of that, the crashing of the glacier, one of the things that my colleague and I, this extraordinary woman, Felicitas von Peters with Active Philanthropy, we ask people to go out and walk and go find a place and sit down for an hour and just sort of be with yourself. And what's fascinating is that most people don't stare out at the glacier. That's big, and that's the big thing that you fly there. But what becomes so clear to most people is right in front of them there might be a little patch of moss, right? And because they're sitting there, they notice in the moss that there are really small insects that are surviving through. And underneath there might be an Arctic berry or some Arctic thyme. And in, you know, in this world of looking out where you're looking at the horizons and you're looking for the big things, there's joy in this microcosm right in front of you. So for me, I do adventure for the grandness of it, but it's in the little bit of your backyard that if you stop and look at it and you stop and you breathe and you get really curious about what's in there that I've never seen and you learn something new, wow, that is joy, right? That is like, who knew right in my own backyard I didn't have to go on a big adventure? An adventure can be inside, near you, and out. So that's how I think about these big and small adventures.
Lisa, I know you also specialize in behavioral science. I was curious to know what's one surprising brain based insight about how we can create more joy in our daily lives.
I think about this a lot. So, one of the godfathers of behavioral economics is a guy named Danny Kahneman, won several awards for his work as a behavioral economist. And he was being interviewed. So, his big last book is Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. I really recommend everyone to read it. It's this sort of deep look in what is automatic in our thinking and what is actually, do we actually put our brain power in? And much more of who we are is automatic, and that's so we can survive, right? Just kind of comes in. It's called systems one and systems two thinking. It's super fun. You can geek out on it. But the thing that I carry in my heart nearly every day, it comes up in my mind, is toward the end of his career. I think he worked to the very last day, contributing to humanity with very low ego. um, he would be asked, and I've listened to a number of his interviews, what is the most important thing to know about behavioral science for the world? If there was one takeaway that you would share. And he consistently said, be easier on people. Most people are doing exactly the best with everything they have. That doesn't mean that you don't like it. I grew up with this strong Bible verse, and it's really interesting because Bible verses are coming more and more back into me. And I'm not religious now, but it was like, detest the sin and not the sinner. And it's sort of the same thing. It's like, don't let your joy being taken away because you're angry at someone. Give this person grace. It doesn't mean there's not consequences to bad behavior. I mean, violence is unacceptable. But if you go around your day kind of angry at people, when this, the preeminent behavioral scientist says, be easier on people. They're doing the best they can. Doesn't mean don't protect yourself, but judge the outcome of it, not them. They're really usually trying or kind of in a circumstance. And somehow that release of judgment and anger and frustration at them versus focusing on the behavior, that really helps me release a lot of frustration and focus on where are the good possibilities.
Very nice. And if someone listening to this podcast feels stuck in life and joyless, where can they start to begin shifting their mindset, in your view?
So, the first place to start for me is with breathing. I know this is very popular right now, but I just want to remind people of this extraordinary power you have within you. Now, a lot of breathing we do in the Western world is somehow all the breathing ends up in our chest. And so I do a lot of pausing and something called box breathing, where you breathe in, hold, and all the way through. So you take it all the way in your lungs and your belly, and you take it out. And I teach politicians this. This comes from the Navy SEALs. My kids and I do it. Like, this is not a crazy hippie thing. This is science kind of rewiring your nervous system. So it's very hard to have joy if you're in a kind of attack or a flight mode. So this pause and not having the breathing stick in your chest, but actually let it go 4 times through. I was moderating an event on AI and political leadership that covered everything at Davos at the World Economic Forum. Very powerful people in the room, former heads of state, CEOs. And in the middle of it, I decided this is a lot. I'm going to ask people to stop and breathe. And a bit of a risk, right? Because it might seem like, ooh, wow. I'll tell you, people came up to me afterwards and said, I felt so much more grounded and back in my body again. It's very hard to have joy if you don't feel kind of connected. So that's number one. It's free, doesn't cost anything. You can do it anywhere, no matter where. Sitting, laying down, you can do it anywhere, and you can do it with others. I really enjoy breathing with others because we're interconnected, this interstitium that we are. The next hot tip, and there's tons of science around this, and I'm working on some writing around biomimicry and leadership and sort of where to find joy in animals and nature. But in general, get outside. I mean, I go for regular walks in the morning. I have a dog named Bowie. Boy, do pets bring you joy. And Bowie and I do a walk every morning, or nearly every morning. And there's this little red squirrel in the tree. We have lots of park. And this little red squirrel, we've named Fred. Fred knows that Bowie's coming, kind of taunts Bowie. And I see Fred doing his thing, getting his acorn, jumping around. And this is like, oh, I've got, a podcast to be on. I've got a budget to deal with. I've got to fly. I've got to help the kids. And me, Bowie, and Fred go for a walk in the morning. It's just simple park. It's nothing big, but I breathe and I find joy in a flying red squirrel with big ears. And I guarantee you, no matter where you are, there is some version of that. It could be a ladybug in a cement park. If you stop and let yourself and give yourself permission to find it, thinking makes it so, said Shakespeare, then it's often around you. So you don't have to take a year off, although you might. You don't have to fly on some adventure trip, although you might want to. You kind of just have to be with yourself and open up your observation, and joy is usually waiting for you.
Indeed, joy is always out there. We just have to stop and smell the roses, as we say. You just spoke about the session you were doing that was tied to the topic of AI, and I was curious to get your views on what role do you believe AI will play in shaping our world in the future?
Well, this is again, you ask all the big questions that we're trying to figure out. I think a lot about the natural default to a lot of people I'm around is that it's going to be bad. And so they go on the defensive and they have a hard time sort of seeing the positives in it. So I'm trying to also spend time with the people who are seeing the positives in it and seeing the opportunity. And somewhere in the middle, right, it's the usage of it that is probably where we are going to land. I do think, there's a lot of smart people thinking about regulation. I do think that it's a bit of a challenge in the political world we are right now because we have a splintering of technology. We do not have global cooperation. We are in some ways in a world war right now, whether it's a literal war like we're seeing between Russia and Ukraine, or it's a cyber war, or it's a culture war. This is time to be quite aware. My advice to everyone, particularly the cynics, is to spend time with it carefully because it's not going away. I think a lot about what people thought when the printing press, Gutenberg brought the printing press, and is that going to be good or bad? When there was radio, was that going to be good or bad? When there was television, I think this is bigger. This is monumentally bigger. So I'm holding out judgment, whether it's good or bad it is, and trying as much as I can to harness it for good, while at the same time supporting people who are thinking about the safeguarding of it. I don't understand it. I mean, anyone who says they understand it are really full of it. I use it regularly. I think about it. I'm developing a relationship with it. I say please and thank you to it because I don't want to lose who I am with the technology. I want to keep my humanity. Now, interestingly, if we back up a little bit to a new technology that goes a bit with AI and blockchain, so this Web3 world, is cryptocurrencies. And I and many people have been very skeptical of it because the usage has been seen as a way for crime. And it is, there's no doubt about that. The more I'm around people who are political prisoners or political exiles, having access to Bitcoin in particular, on the blockchain, which basically means, it can't be corrupted. It's very clear that it's yours. It's more protected. It is actually sort of a game-changing currency for people in repressive regimes. So I try to not. I think one of the reasons I stay joyful, even in crazy moments, is I try to keep very grounded and centered. Maria Abramovich has a card set that she gives cards, and it's crazy things. I don't know if you know her. She's an artist, and I just love her work. And one of the cards that I recently drew, and I haven't done it yet, is to get up in the morning naked, run outside, and put your feet on the ground, bare naked for 15 minutes to ground yourself. You don't have to ground yourself to do that, but I do think it's in this crazy time right now. I think joy is very, very hard for people to find because it's chaotic. And the one thing I'm not going to let chaos do is take my joy away, because that is my fuel to something I'm calling hard hope. Now, There's soft hope. It's kind of wishing and you hope things are better. Hard hope is actively being engaged in protecting and changing the system so we can have the sort of outcomes that we want. Hard hope requires joy. It requires curiosity. And so for me, this joy and hard hope in these times go together.
And what are you actually most hopeful for when we're talking about hard hope and connecting the dimension of joy? What do you envision our future to be? And especially if you were to fast forward 20 years from now, right? What do you hope your impact on society would have been as a result of all the beautiful work that you do today?
I think about this a lot. And I think my biggest wish for everyone in this moment today is to not be so focused on the future that they forget to take a deep breath and be grateful for everything they have. I do a lot of work on brain and behavioral science, and particularly the issue of cynicism, which is really dangerous in times like this. And from a neuroscience perspective, there's three buffers that in combination will really help you not be cynical, but actually help you gain power to do this. One is gratitude. I find a lot of joy in gratitude. So over the years, I've done so much intentional gratitude practice that it is sort of built into my DNA to be grateful to things. Community, I spend a lot of time in community and I'm thoughtful about who I'm in community with. That does not mean I'm only in community with people who have the same political beliefs as I do or come from the same country, but I'm with people who are curious and are generative. Like, think about how do we do things together, even if we are different. Sometimes those are my favorite people to be with. And the last is joy and pleasure, to make sure that you have that, because if you don't have that, you can't have this hard hope. So before we worry about what the future looks like, we have today. I don't want to discount today for the future, because I think if you're satisfied today, I mean, not kind of blinded, right? But you first have to take care of today in order to think of the future. Look, I don't know what the future holds for any of this. I'm kind of a pathological optimist, and I know what often happens with innovation and ingenuity is when you get squeezed and your resources are constrained. I'm not asking for any of those things to happen, but they seem to be happening more and more, whether it be climate, income inequality, shrinking spaces for civil society and freedom of expression, all of these things. I believe that breakthrough innovation happens with constraints when you have the right leaders with the right ethics and the right curiosity and the right agility. That gives me hope. People and urgency give me hope.
Lisa, given your work in the political realm, what is your view on the current political leadership situation that we're seeing unfold across the world?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, because I might bring you some thoughts about this that may or may not be counterintuitive. It's really clear from the data that trust in politics and politicians is quite low. Now, what's really interesting is a lot of that data is at the national level. Trust sits proximal in the brain, meaning you are less likely to trust something that you are far away from. So if you would ask about trust of local politicians, often that's closer because trust is proximal. So we're seeing a lot of activities and working with a lot of politicians to bring politics back closer to the people. I do think AI and technology is going to allow for a lot of that closer touching, not just human to human, but more tailored to the needs of the person versus sort of cascaded down from above. So super excited about the promise of AI bringing much more tailored personal responses from politics to people. At the same time, people are wanting to be closer to their political leaders. Political leaders are in a really difficult situation. 80% of women politicians get regular death threats or threats of violence against them or their families. So, at a time when we need our politicians to be closer to the people, and we need the best people, the ones that are intrinsically motivated, the ones that deeply care, the ones who have the ethics to be able to do this, it's not a very attractive job to go in. So, this is a problem, right? Just when you need the best people in, you have a situation that's driving some of the best people out. All that being said, There are extraordinary people in politics right now. You tend to remember there's a bias, a negativity bias. So you tend to remember the things that are most likely to hurt you, right? So you don't hear in the media, and you often don't remember the great politicians that exist out there because they don't make the headlines, and you're not scared of them. You're scared of the people who might hurt you. So there are a number of wonderful politicians, and we just did the first ever global survey on the mental well-being of politicians. Well, I'll tell you, it's not good. Yet, they still at the end of it say it's an honor to serve and work with the people in my communities, whether that's Jimena from Mexico or Ida from Denmark or Professor Yunus, from Bangladesh. A lot of people are accidental politicians because they just feel the calling from their community. So if I have one really important call to the listeners, you don't have to have joy about your politicians, because if you don't feel it, you don't feel it. I challenge you to actually get to know some of them, because they're real people. They're not robots. They're people like you and me who feel a calling or got called to do it by their communities. But I often hear all politicians are corrupt. They're all like this. We would never say that about any of all policemen are bad. Well, maybe you would, but it's not true. All teachers are like, well, it can't be. You would never say all a certain race of people are like this. That just doesn't make sense. There's no ways you can say these politicians did this, or even if you want, a lot of politicians do this. But please, every time you make this kind of joke, you make the politicians the butt of the joke, you kind of reinforce this negativity that pushes the good people out of politics, and then you get the bad ones in. So this is called social norming, right? This is deep in brain and behavioral science. So if you want more joy in politics, you have to create space for the good people who want to come in. They will never be perfect. Are you? No. But we can have people that we respect and that respect you. And I'm seeing them coming. I am so hopeful. We have a network of political leadership entrepreneurs around the world, from the Arctic to people in exile to Togo. People are saying we want new and different type of politics. So that gives me a lot of hope. But I ask you, quit making politicians the butt of the joke. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve us.
Amazing. And Lisa, any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners as it relates to living more joyfully and experiencing life to the fullest?
Yeah, the hot tip, which isn't such a hot tip, that I'm a recovering sweaty tryhard. So I used to get up every day. I'm going to make the world a better place. I was going to try really hard. And so I would read nonfiction books all the time. Nonfiction books are great, but I would read them and bookmark them and read them and highlight them and read them and carry around and sleep on them. Because I thought if I squish it all in my head, I'll be better and I'll prove to myself that I'm good. And then as our attention spans have gotten smaller for a number of reasons, I found myself drifting off in these books and kind of looking right at the end of the chapter summary, right? Like, what can I learn from this? And then you have these apps, Blinkist, right? Or whatever. They're all great apps, but like summarize them in 7 minutes. And I just felt deep in my heart that that was not giving me joy or the tools that I needed, because my attention span and ability to think went from thinking in chapters to bullet points to words. So what I've done, my hot tip, last year, beginning of 2024, I started slow reading, and I started slow reading fiction. And if I could recommend one book that I've recently read that I just devour, and it's connected to political leadership, it's connected to some of these big questions around innovation, climate change. It's written by Richard Powers, and it's called Playground. And it's a beautiful, hard look at life and the sea and race and politics and greed. And for me, my hard tip to give me joy is just to read much more literature and read it slowly. Don't have a tally of how many books you read, right? Don't even do it in your own mind. You don't have to post it on social media. Swim in beautiful writing. That to me just is the tip that has brought so much joy to my life. And you learn a lot in these books, and you learn them in different ways. They hang on story versus bullet points. So that's my joyful tip, is just go back to reading long, hard books again.
Great. Thank you so much,
Can I
Lisa.
show you? Can I show you here? I should have worn this for the podcast. This is from, it says read more books. This is from the my right in front of me. I have a puppet theater and an independent women's bookstore. And so for myself, I have this in my office and it reminds me I have the hiking I like to do, which is where I take my family to be in nature. I surround myself with who I want to be. I have icons. I don't overdo it. I'm not an over hippie. I don't light a candle every day. But you are what you eat and you are what you remind yourself for. So I hope everyone listening, I have a lot to learn. I look forward to learning from your podcast. I am so grateful. I know part of your life story and the fact that you gift of yourself this to us. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been an immense pleasure to speak with you today.